Okay, so how was your new year so far?
It's going very well. Thank you very much. Appreciate that. How about you? How you doing?
It's doing well, it's doing well. And I was wondering, with this new year, what class did you select and what did you learn about them?
This year I picked the my fifth period class. It's a unique group. It's an academy class. You know, Dr. Rogers pulled together this unique batch of students. Traditionally, their average GPA coming into Grant was 0.6, and with our last work, our last GPA report out from the quarter had an average of a 2.67. So our goal was to take these low-performing students and get them at least a 3.0 or above. And the dynamic of the class was so unique such that I had to pick them as my focus group. So otherwise, you know, it would be looking at an honor selection, and it's not as demanding for my attention, I feel, given the circumstances. So a very unique group of students, very energetic, but learning to be eager to learn.
And even though when you looked at, you said the GPA was 0.6 when they came in.
Right, right.
And so what kind of, when you look at the breakdown of the class, what are some of the demographics of the class that you saw?
Oh, well, predominantly, you know, it's a minority makeup. We have a large population of African-American students, Latino population. I think I have 2 Southeast Asian students total, but for the most part it's Black and Latino. And, you know, there's many things that could be said about that, but what the program aspired to do is take them out of the tracking system. So changing the setup, the dynamic of the situation, I think would really enable them to do well.
So with that, so you have your demographics now, what are the academic breakdown?
Well, interestingly, while a majority of them came in with very low C- or lower scores or grades for their core classes, it's remarkable to see how well some of them, you know, were able to perform on, on the standardized test from last year's STAR test, as well as this year's quarter assessment. While I didn't have anyone meet, you know, or place advanced, I had a number of students who placed proficient, who traditionally, based on their GPA, you'd assume they wouldn't reach that level. So there's a discrepancy between their grades and their actual performance and test scores.
And their abilities.
And their potential, yeah, exactly.
And so when you looked at that, how many EL students do you have? What breakdown do you have of that?
Off the top of my head, I think it was like 4 or 5 EL students. Interestingly, all of which have been reclassified, but that doesn't mean to say that they don't need that attention still. Sometimes reclassification can put a student in a precarious position where they've been made to feel as though they're prepared to operate independently, but in all actuality aren't. So yeah, right here, actually I was off, excuse me, I have a total of 7 EL students, 1 special ed student, which isn't a severe or case. You know, it's a mild to moderate situation, and the intervention team and support is there for him, primarily focusing on his speech issues. So,
And how many languages are involved with your EL?
1, 2, 3 languages. And the 2 Hmong students that I spoke of were both in the EL population. And then the other language is Russian. Then the remaining group is Spanish speakers.
And then what I see is that how many students in that class, total number?
Total number in the class, I have 32 on the roll. But interestingly, you know, I have an average of 20 to 25 in attendance. If you go over the class profile, you'll see that, you know, attendance was an issue for quite a few students.
Yes, I was see.
And if and when we get to the communication log, you'll also see that that's a group of students that I've been really trying to reach out to their families and inquire about the situation. For the most part, get support, verbal support, but the habits and patterns haven't necessarily changed, you know, to any extreme.
Okay, and then, so now that you've looked at your school population and the profile of your class, what have you seen insofar as the information about the school now?
I've been welcomed by everyone that I've spoken with regarding the information, and it was actually really easy to start tracking the people and the resources down, from utilizing the school handbook to speaking with the secretaries, principals, very friendly as well. Have you been very helpful in that process? I really appreciate that all. I've learned that there are a multitude of programs and services available for these youngsters, and I, for one, know that I've got to learn to make better use and access those for my students. So I'm grateful again, that I had to go through the process to learn of what the school has to offer. Otherwise, it could be years before you learn that on your own without being compelled to go seek it.
And so now with our community, what have you learned about the community that can help you in facilitating the instruction in the class?
Well, a variety of things. There's such a wide spectrum to look at when answering that question. But from resources available, I've learned of the Urban League. I've learned of multiple, churches that offer services. But the sense of camaraderie that you find here will bring parents and alumni and a lot of other opportunities back to the school. For one, I really think, and I don't know if this is going off track, but all the extracurricular activities that are offered at the school, I think really help focus the students on academics as well. Community resources as well. I've learned at the Robertson Center how frequently students go there, and there's a small community there that's established and they feel very comfortable going to. And I have students who attend classes at the Urban League, whether it's Photoshop training so they can get a graphic design type job. I've learned of a few things, but I know there's a whole lot out there more that I really need to learn of. So that's something that I plan on definitely looking into more.
And I heard that you talked about the students that have attendance issues. You're communicating closely with the parents, and so what is your strategies for this year in building that communication with parents and guardians that we have here?
Well, the first conversation has simply been to ask for support and ask, is everything going on? Is everything all right at the household? Is there anything that's prohibiting him specifically or her specifically from getting to class? And the answer usually is no. There's whether it's a valid excuse or not, is doesn't get up on time, or there's some line of excuses. But the next step in the second phone call is I like to put them on an attendance and behavior contract. Usually not so much for the behavior. I say the students' behaviors, they're freshmen, so they give what I expect in terms of behavior, but the attendance is a great concern. So I have them on an attendance contract. They've got to document whether they were on time or not. And then if they're absent to class that week, then we'll go ahead and start the process of starting an SST or student support team. And we'll pull together and hold a meeting so that we can figure out a way to get them into class every day. And that involves a parent. That requires a parent to be present in the meeting with the staff members, all the teachers, and the behavior and attendance specialist. So,
do you see that it's making a difference with some of the kids already
or
certainly. Now?
For the ones that I've had SSTs with, yeah. The first phone call home, for a couple of them, it seemed to work immediately, but it didn't have a lasting effect. The pattern apparently must have been established over time, and we got to do more than one phone call home to break that pattern. And so when the behavior and attendance contract was implemented, when they had to start utilizing that tool, they became far more aware of their accountability now. And then for let me think now, for the two students that I've had this go as far as an SST, one of them I've seen a night and day turnaround. The other, it's looking much more positive than it was initially, a little more promising, but not as dramatic as that first one. But there's change nonetheless, and I've seen students not even reach that SST meeting point because they are, honoring the contract, and after 2 weeks of staying loyal to that contract and doing it well, they're off of contract. So they've earned that breather, that freedom. And I've even had students get to that point. So, but for the ones who are habitually truant, and there's only so much I can do there with that one, and that eventually gets passed off to others. And like Mr. Sanchez and Miss Sierra, I know that they're working on quite a few of the students that aren't showing up to school right now.
And so because this is your second year, and as you look at the population that you have, you look at the services that are provided by our school, and then the changes in district, and then our community, and seeing those different services that are available and the like. How do you think all of this is going to inform your teaching this year differently than it did last year?
Oh, that's a heavy question. Well, for one, a constant reminder that no 2 years are the same. And that, extrapolate that even further, is a reminder that I can't teach how I was taught. But back into the question, no 2 years are the same, and new resources arrive while others, fall by the wayside, and I need to stay vigilant about making sure I am aware of what's available. I also think that, I know that last year I wasn't communicating with parents as consistently as I am now, to the degree that I am now regarding the things I am now. Last year it would be more of a behavioral issue, and I learned last year that you need to start off with a positive, a relationship with the parents, because if the first time you're communicating with them is because of a negative issue, you're not going to get that support. So I've learned to establish that relationship and utilize the tools in place.
And one, putting all those pieces together, because that contact with the family and that contact with the community is a critical support for you,
Right,
as well as to the students. And so with that, how is it going to inform, what do you want to focus on this year in your teaching practice?
This year, it's because I've been it's kind of like a deductive process that brought me to this, in the sense that I've been communicating with parents so frequently. One of my policies this year is, and you'll see a poster in my classroom, it says, make it impossible for the students to leave without showing a mastery of the concept. That's not always possible, but perhaps it is. But I'm trying to make it a legitimate practice. So I'm having students stay after school, or I'll have students come in during their lunchtime to show me that they understand a concept that they may or may not have been able to show a mastery to in class. Taking that into account, the fact that I'm in the classroom at least an hour each day, that I'm available and not involved in something else, and I'm working with these students so frequently, I had to step back and ask what can be done proactively, not to resolve that issue, because there's nothing wrong with students seeking more attention and help, but when it's me demanding they stay and invest that time beyond the instructional time, it made me aware of my checking for understanding practices and modifying my instruction in the course of that instructional day, not from day to day, but actually on the actual spot. So it's compelled me to look specifically, how frequently and efficiently do I check for understanding of each individual student. That's another thing I really like to try to do, is speak to each student in each class period, and when I speak to them, are they showing me that they understand that concept? And then lastly, to offer like an exit price for the students. They can show me as they leave the door, I've got it, and I can sit there with my clipboard with their name and say, yep, nope, need to see you after school, come see me at lunch, and so on. So I believe that the better I do with that, the less it will require of the students' time beyond their already scheduled time with me. So that's kind of what it's led me to focus on. I know that was a big jump, but
that's good.
But when I have 4, 5, 6 students in the classroom each day after school, and I'm going over material that I could have addressed more efficiently in that time I had with them, it makes me aware that I need to use my time better and make sure they've got the concept in the time we have, because there are a few students who can't stay after school.
Yeah.
So the equity issue starts to arise there. So I need to do a better job in the instructional moment, modify, learn to, I guess, operate a little more on a whim versus a rigid, outline, even though while I may not stay loyal or married to the lesson plan for the day, I am staying loyal or married to that learning objective. It's just to what degree am I focusing on the issue.
Being adaptive.
Exactly.
So it looks like you put a lot of thought into looking at your population, finding your focus student, pulling all the resources together from the school, the district, and the like, and now it's putting together a strategy that you want to use to do your instruction with your students this year. So you've done a lot of good work, and so we'll set up another time where we will meet and look at your IIP, and then also look at what you want to do in your observation.
Fantastic. All right.
All right.
Look forward to it.
Time for coffee.
Yeah.